Sometimes it's nice to work on something smaller, but if you
Yeah.
have a bigger role on a smaller project, you learn to do things that you didn't know before. You sort of try to navigate your way to do smaller projects where you have more responsibility and you can learn how to do the more creative tasks. Sometimes it's good to be with a smaller company where you have a different approach and you're asked to do different things. If it goes da 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 da, you're building in a natural feeling of some kind of building momentum. Jo-Ha-Kyu is describing movement. Jo is the beginning. So Jo is in a particular direction, that it's gone from stillness to movement to a ha, rising action. So start in a direction. Ha is the rising tension. A-Y-U is the turning point. And then the momentum has built up, the energy is built up to a moment where it's at a peak. I went with a little beat up car with $100 in my pocket, staying in an apartment with a futon.
Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Grace. So my name is Mark Solomon, and I've been a film editor for many years in Los Angeles and in London and in Montreal primarily. I've written a new book that you can see over my shoulder called Over the Shoulder, about my experiences and to help young people starting out in a career involving with storytelling, visual storytelling especially, and using drama and the principles of storytelling to convey content that you create. And it's something that's close to my heart. And the thing that matters most to me is the present moment. I mean, what matters the most is what we're doing right now. And rather than go deeply into my past or what I'm going to do in the future, I want to thank Grace for the opportunity to be in this present live event. It's very meaningful to me and exhilarating to be here, and I thank you.
No worries. A little bit more about myself. My name is Grace. I'm a seasoned tech in digital marketing, AI, and data. And I'm fortunate enough to have worked at Microsoft marketing, as well as leading organizations like Canon in data analytics in marketing vertical. I'm humble to have made contributions that help generate up to 9-figure annual revenues for these businesses. I'm actually elevating leadership transformation for professionals and businesses to maximize profitability and fulfillment, ensuring not just growth, but more sustainable success. I'm actually also a keynote speaker in artificial intelligence and digital marketing. I figured out it is very essential to equip with storytelling, which I find at the heart of narratives, the story in a compelling and engaging manner. What do you think about storytelling, Mark?
Storytelling for me it humanizes information. Like if going back to when in caves, when people said, how did the hunt go? You'd come back and tell the story of what happened, the dangers you faced. So it's a way to convey information, to teach in a group in a way that's vivid and memorable. And using the tools today, I think in both animation and with AI, the machines run ahead with the information, and it's important to try to keep it in a way that's memorable and humanizing, and that means it engages the emotions. Storytelling is a way to engage emotionally with a group of people, with your listeners, to tell your story in a way that stays with them. And there's tools to do that. There's ways to tell stories. There's ways to build stories depending on how long they are. And all those can sort of translate from the performing arts like theater and drama and film and television and business and startups.
Right. Leadership is the art and science of motivating, guiding, and managing ourselves first, and then a group of people towards achieving a common goal. Setting a vision, making strategic decisions, and inspiring others to follow through the actions that contribute towards the realization of that vision. Leadership is a quality that can be demonstrated in any context. Do you have any thoughts and understanding, particularly about leadership and how actually storytelling connect dots for leadership from your perspective?
My perspective, there's sort of two sides of that question based on my experience. Some of it is the experience of working on a movie. It's a big enterprise involving hundreds of people, months or years of time. And it involves a good movie is well led. And the leadership comes from the producer or the director or whoever is the sort of primary creative voice to get people to buy in to the vision of the story and to build a team that works well together. The other side of it is the content of the stories. Like the content of the movies I've worked in, a lot of those revolve around leadership. Like the first one I did in animation was Space Jam. It was a movie with Michael Jordan, the basketball player, and Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes. And it was a comedy, but it was about him setting a standard of excellence for the team, that you can translate some of those messages in a fun, colorful, memorable way to whatever project you're working on. Another movie was Chicken Run, where these chickens were trying to escape their farm in the north of England. And they
Yes,
had one leader character, Ginger, who was trying to get all her comrades to work together so that they could escape a dire fate. And their efforts to work together, their stumbling efforts to work together, and then gradually becoming more of a team and realizing the importance of it, is something that translates into other fields. And to use these as stories as a model for the behavior that you want your team to invest in.
Yeah, I love the story.
What you agreed to believe in watching a movie like that, because they're not real chickens. They're plasticine. They're pieces of clay that have very limited expression. But because the story is engaging, and because it's sort of the stakes are high, whether it's life or death, whether they're going to survive, that you invest yourself in these pieces of clay where you can see the thumbprints of the animator on their faces. It gives the audience something to engage with, that it's not being all just spoon-fed to you, that you have to work to meet the story halfway. And when you can do that with no matter what kind of story you're telling, you're getting an engagement with the viewer, your listener, in a way that's longer lasting, instead of giving everything over to be passively received.
I love that. So we talk a little bit about Chicken Run. So what about yourself? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current role in the industry, and more about your career journey and how you become an expert in film and animation editing?
Sure. Well, I started out in theater, in live theater, like working with a theater troupes, because I really loved that process of learning how actors think, how writers and directors think, and how to rehearse with a text and sort of make it come alive. Now, that part of it has carried me through with beyond theater to working in film and television. I became an editor, and editing is like a guild where it's very old school, where you start as an apprentice, then you become an assistant, and you sort of gradually work your way up. And I happened to be coming into the industry at a time when there was this huge transition going on from analog to digital. And so being at the forefront of the technology was a big advantage, because I didn't have to forget older technologies, like various iterations, like the way young people starting out now, if you're starting out, artificial intelligence is part of your world. You don't have to let go of anything to embrace AI. It's the new thing. You're new to it. You have a big advantage that way. But applying lessons I learned from the theater to film, and then to editing, and then from editing live action, like regular movies, when I was working primarily as an assistant on live action movies, the transition to animation allowed me to step up to become an editor, because it was new to everybody. Apply the lessons that I was learning, that I brought with me from theater and that I learned from live action film, to animated films, where everybody was trying to figure out, how do you make an animated movie? And then so I did that for a number of years. I liked the people. It's collaborative, creative environment, working with people who talk with their pencils, where they can like draw pictures as you speak and show you a beautiful sketch in 30 seconds. This will be a wonderful process.
Yeah.
But at a stage now where what I want to do is sort of pass that on to young people starting out. And so being involved more with being an author of this book over the shoulder, being a teacher and a consultant for productions, is the kind of stuff that I enjoy more now, instead of being at the coalface editing a whole movie day by day.
That's really impressive. It is not just about the technology itself, it's more about our human being, how we actually grow, adapt, evolve. It's really interesting to talk about the storytelling. It would be a good idea to talk about a little bit more about your book.
Sure.
What kind of
there it is.
Oh, I love it.
So Over the Shoulder. So I wrote that based on my experience working, because I remember when I was starting out, when I moved to Los Angeles with like just like $100. I was staying in this little tiny apartment, and I was trying to find my way into the movie business. I thought that editing I liked because the project was already in some ways tangible, that it wasn't just an idea floating in the air, that if it was ready for an editor, that means that there was something already shot that there was to put together, or video or whatever it was.
Right.
And I like that, but it was a difficult way. Because it's a competitive business with no clear bar to entry. There's lots of people who want to do it. And so how do you stand out? And what I wound up doing was I contacted the editors who had edited my favorite 10 movies, say, and wrote them a letter, and I put this in the book, and then reached out to them and sort of said, I'll be your apprentice. And I found as a way into a competitive field. And the editors that I spoke to, I really liked them. They were tactful and diplomatic. They're used to being caught between big personalities of a director and a producer who's telling you, make it shorter, make it longer, do these things, and having to navigate personal relationships, technical, the fast changing technical field, and the story content. Because in a way, an editor it's more than a job. It's being a host organism, that you let the movie live inside you and you make decisions based on how it feels to live with the story like this. And I wanted to share that with people starting out, to sort of pay back the editors who were kind and generous to me when I was starting out.
How have you navigated your career after that?
After you get started, people like the origin story. That everyone likes that sort of, I went with a little beat up car with $100 in my pocket, staying in an apartment with a futon, la la la. That's hardship to entry, like to sort of succeed. And then once you get sort of, you penetrate and you get in, it's like a seesaw. How can I do this? So
I love that.
The scale of the role you can become an apprentice, and the scale of the project. And you sort of try to navigate your way to do smaller projects where you have more responsibility and you can learn how to do the more creative tasks, or go shoot something yourself with your phone now, or a smaller movie. And then your role and the scale of the project sort of seesaw back and forth. You can keep working on, like if you can work on a James Bond movie as an apprentice editor, that gives you a recognizable title. But if you have a bigger role on a smaller project, you learn to do things that you didn't know before. Because on a big project like these studio pictures, it's like you're a small cog in a big machine. And sometimes it's nice to work on something smaller, where the responsibilities are more direct. Like you said yourself, it's good to be with a big company like Microsoft, but sometimes it's good to be with a smaller company where you have a different approach and you're asked to do different things.
There is no right or wrong or good or bad. It has its good things, and of course it has some disadvantages. It's entirely down to your vision and your preference. What do you want to achieve in your life? What fits you better, like your personality, your character, and your strengths, because everyone's strengths are different. If I'm finding myself more comfortable working in a startup or in a smaller size of company, that's totally fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But people are quite caring about where you're from, which company are you from. If you're from FANG or tech, naturally more likely to gain more or attention. It's not just something about the authority or credibility. It's how you stand out as a person. You tell your stories, the elements shape who you are today. Were there pivotal moments and decisions that significantly influenced your path? For example, your understanding of storytelling, or your journey to pitch investors, or your journey to make a step up in your career?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been several, because I've been at it for a while. But one that really came to me from working in theater. I did one of the earliest things I did. I was living in New York, and I worked at this theater that did traditional Asian theater forms. So somehow they got a group of actors from New York to go up to Connecticut and do this, like Balinese play, Japanese plays, and Indian play. And the Japanese theater has a very refined aesthetic, which I found fascinating. And they have this idea of Jo-Ha-Kyu, where motion goes in a beginning, middle, and end, but it comes in a rising pattern and then falls. And that's sort of Jo-Ha-Kyu.
Yes.
is a pattern of movement that exists in the natural world, and you can describe a lot of things as having that sort of gradually building up and receding kind of energy. And that has helped me a lot in editing for animation, especially, like to create this feeling of movement, create the illusion of movement by thinking about this principle of Jo-Ha-Kyu. Nobody else talks about Jo-Ha-Kyu in my world. And so I can bring something unique to the kind of projects I get to work on. Because what I wanted in the beginning was I wanted to work with the best people. That was the thing that mattered to me. I figured if I'm working with really good, the top people, then the projects will be good, the atmosphere will be better. And that proved to be true. That was sort of what guided me. And it's good to have, it doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but it's good to have something that sort of guides your decisions about what kind of projects to take when you're in a project-based industry.
Have you seen any film classic examples that you can point us where they nailed one of the tactics in a book?
Sure. There was a studio, Blue Sky, that was like, this was an interesting thing that they did. So they had a sophisticated software set up to do lighting, so to do like lighting for an animated movie. So they could recreate the effect. In general, people were just doing it spot by spot or to do an overall light or just the direction of a light. But what they came up with was a way to use the math to create the way light bounces around in an environment. So if you have a light from above, how that bounces on the table in front of you and hits up under your chin, as well as various things. So they created a story that used their strength to tell a story about a moth. That sort of, there's an old grandmother in a little hut in, like in the woods, like a fairy tale. And a moth is drawn to the light. So you see all these shots of the moth being drawn to the light. And if I'll have to remember, I'll have to find the name of that thing. I think maybe it's called Moth, but it was their sort of first thing. Or Pixar, what they did with Luxo, the lamp, where they had they created the feeling of a parent and child with these two, angle poised lamps. And to create a character out of an inanimate object is really, that you make you feel like that there's something magical, that it makes you care about whether the child lamp will be loved by the grown-up lamp. Think of it like what you're being asked to follow. And that's about the magic of belief. How you get people to believe in the story is that it has to cross. If the pictures across the screen, it's not really connecting to the audience, that it has to make people ask what happens next.
Yes.
And that sort of anticipation in the way you build tension is what draws interest. To leave space around the words you want people to remember. Playing that.
That's beautiful. I hear the word believe, and I also resonate a lot with that because that is the power of belief, right? You cultivate your audience with what you believe and reasons behind your actions. We got to know why first. Why you do this? What's the reason? What is the reason behind why we need to do this? Maximize your strengths because you need to know your talents, your strength, which in my coaching for professionals today, in job searches, client, also teamwork in a business organization, you need to know what are your talents, what are your strengths, because it is so easy that we forget about our strengths, but really focus on our weaknesses and develop the self-doubt. But actually, we are good enough. It's all about how you maximize your strengths and your talent, and then go ahead, keep doing it instead of demotivating yourself. The leader is the hero to lead and inspire, motivate themselves and the team to actually work toward the goal. Is there any storytelling tool that you have used that we use?
That's a storytelling technique, is that you think about what the result you want and like what's the final thing that you want your audience to feel. Are they meant to feel exhilarated and cheering? Are they meant to feel happy and amused? Or, what's the effect that you want them to walk away with? So, and then back your story in. So you give yourself a distance to travel to get there. You can start from the opposite of that everyone, like the chickens in Chicken Run, are all depressed because they're going to go into that machine. And they eventually all work together and become heroic. They share in the leader's heroism. I think that's important. And that the way you build a team is you get people to buy into the leader's vision. So people feel like it's their story too. And I'm working on lots of movies. I mean, you see that when it's done well, when the producer really has an idea like this is going to make a real impact on people, people are going to remember this movie. People are going to, this is a project that's going to have a real effect on the culture and the society and on kids. The wonderful thing about animation is that it reaches young people, and that the stories that you work on will be a part of their life. And that motivates you to try really hard and polish every pixel and make something that's worth the attention. Does that answer your
Amazing.
question?
How do you feel in this scenario? How do you see the whole picture that you can step back, find a problem, why has caused that problem, what you can do as a leader to actually motivate the team to achieve their goals and to uplift them to achieve their goals as well. How does one make presence and memorable pitch on a phone call to a producer? If you're going to have a pitch via a phone call, there's no Zoom call, you can't see people's faces to pitch a producer. How do you make a presence and memorable pitch via a phone call to a producer?
The most important thing is to hook someone's interest with the first thing you say, so that why should they be interested? Why should I care about this story?
Yes.
Why, you have to get past that hurdle, and you can try a million different things, or whether it's instinctive or trying it out on people, so that you have some hook that the first thing you say captures interest. And then if what you have is your voice, you use the tools of vocal communication, that you can whisper and that you can be very loud and that you can speak slowly or quickly, and modulate your voice to create some dynamic, so that you can use Jo-Ha-Kyu, so you have a hook in the beginning, you build interest in the story that's coming, it gathers, and then you go faster and faster until you finally say, and then Margot Robbie kisses the hero and the two of them ride off into the sunset, or whatever it's going to be. But you build to a moment where the story opens like a flower, is the idea.
That's beautiful. It's really insightful. Especially when you can't really show your facial expressions, right? Now, whereas like us now in the call can see each other's faces at least, but in a phone call, it's hard to show, but you can definitely showcase your voice and your tone while the call. Definitely
practice, whether that's sort of a 2-minute, like an elevator pitch, or whether it's a 5, or, how long do you expect to be speaking, and leave open spaces for people to interject.
When I was ready to stand on stage and present or to talk, I always give myself 5 to 10 minutes, raise my vibrational energy, start to get immersed. Visualize how you're already talking. If your heartbeat is getting faster, that is a good sign. You're nervous, but at the same time, you're excited. That excitement, you get into that excitement and you're ready to go. Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes before the call or the presentation. Immerse yourself into the visualization of talking to someone that's really important to you. Mark, would you care to expand the declare victory and move on? The freelancers arrive with highs and lows. How does one declare victory when faced with a high disappointment?
Okay, things happen, right? Everything doesn't always go the way you want. The movies, projects can go south in a million different ways. You can get fired. The movie can be you can make the movie and it turns out not to be good. It can be good and then nobody goes to see it. It can be good and people go to see it, but the reviews are bad. There's a million things places where you can run into an obstacle, a challenge, a setback. The only thing that's kept me sane through doing this for a long time on lots of different projects is to just take on board the idea that, what did I learn from this? What can I take forward from this? What do I need to let go of and never think about again? And what can I take from this, like the relationships with the people? Or I learned something about motivating people, even if it's negative. You reach the end point of the project, you let go of what you can, you decide what you want to take with you, and you go on to the next one and don't hang on to it. Does someone want to hear Jo-Ha-Kyu more? Jo-Ha-Kyu is describing movement. Jo is the beginning. So Jo is in a particular direction. that it's gone from stillness to movement. You've chosen a direction. Ha is rising action. So that it either builds momentum, builds speed, builds the challenges that are being faced, builds an army of people gathering to do it. Ha, rising action. So start in a direction. Ha is the rising tension. And Q, Kyu, is the turning point. And then the momentum has built up, the energy is built up to a moment where it's at a peak, and then it starts again. Think about the way like a wave crashes on the beach. So that it swells, it rises and turns, and then bang, and then starts again. And that sort of rising and falling rhythm in a
Rise and falls and turning point.
yes, and so it keeps it from being too regular and plotted. Like if every step feels the same, the rhythm can feel boring. If it goes da 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 da, you're building in a natural feeling of some kind of building momentum.
Yes.
You can carry through even if the content doesn't make sense.
Indeed.
It's a tool you can use.
What skills should future leaders develop to enhance their storytelling ability in an increasingly digital and globalized world?
Empathy. That a leader has empathy and can understand, you can put yourself in the shoes of the people you're speaking to, that you're looking to persuade. That if you're faking that it means something to you, it's not going to come across as genuine. If you can really be in touch with why it's important to you and why you need a team to contribute to it, that everybody's contribution is important, and that it's not about serving the leader, but serving the cause, then you're more likely to get people to see you as somebody who can lead the project on going forward. Look at the stories, battlefield stories, whether from Homer, from the Odyssey and the Iliad, or from the latest movies about what's happening in various battlefields now. But you look at what the leader brings to the story, and how can you apply that to the people that you're looking to engage and motivate.
Empathy is definitely also a very essential leadership quality. And being able to really think and see and feel in someone else's shoes and be able to uplift them to achieve their goals. That is what a good and true leader could do. And I hear one thing that I really like personally is leadership is about serving people, serving others, than throwing at rank or overpowering people. Is there any great stories that share about serving people within the storytelling?
Well, there's stories that are meaningful to me that I've liked. Movies that remind me of that. I've been watching war movies lately, so some of it has to do with the sort of battlefield stuff. So Mel Gibson is an actor that I worked on a couple of different projects with, one that he directed, and he was a voice in Chicken Run, the voice of the rooster Rocky. And he did a movie, I think it's called Hacksaw Ridge, where he played a conscientious objector who volunteered to go join the military. So he didn't want to carry a gun, but he was willing to go fight. But he was willing to go to the war zone without having a weapon. And so he became like a medical officer. And he does this incredibly heroic thing of saving people, injured soldiers, and bringing them back to safety over and over during a battle. He sacrificed himself he wanted to be a part of the unit he was with, and was willing to, at great personal sacrifice, lead the other people to safety. And this character, who had been ridiculed by all these other guys for the whole rest of the movie, by the end, they look at him with, they couldn't speak because they admired him so much. Because he gave up his own person. He didn't do it for himself. He worked for others and was willing to sacrifice himself. And people love those kind of stories. I mean, it's inspiring.
Out of so many stories, how do we choose the story when we have so many of them that could fit?
Well, I think it's good practice, I have found, to understand your own life as a story. and think about how you would tell your life story as a story, as a dramatic story. What would be the parts that you would skip over, like a montage? What were the parts where the big pivotal points? And you can exaggerate or, overly sharpen the points that you want to emphasize, so that you make the point. Not only were you won a contest for your classroom, but you say that you was a victory that over a whole school, or you can make it bigger. So in the practice of storytelling, you decide what to exaggerate and what to minimize. And what would make your getting used to seeing your life as a story gets you more familiar with how stories work.
We need to know who we are speaking to. What type of audience are you talking? Is there an effective way to actually help your audience resonate with what you offer, with a particular story that you're proud of or you're passionate about? What they're expecting to hear. If there are a finance director or if there are a technical professional, what their expectations could be quite different. At some level, you need to know like what they love to from their perspective. So you're sort of leading your audience with your story that you already prepared and you're proud of, you're confident about in a presentation or a public speaking. That could also develop your confidence. There's a lot of scenarios where people just out of nowhere ask some random questions. But if you know your audience well enough beforehand, you think in their shoes, right? The empathy bit. And you start to look at your stories that can truly resonate with them.
In the movie business, what you're saying about audience really resonates with me. And the way they do that marketing for movies is they divide the audience into quadrants.
Yes, that's a different thing.
Young boys, young girls,
Yes.
mothers and fathers, boys and girls. And the idea for a project is that if it's an expensive production, like a big studio animated movie, you want to reach all four quadrants. So you have jokes for the dads, you have things for the moms to like, you have something for the younger audience as well, that everybody gets something out of it. But if you're focusing on a particular quadrant, like put yourself in their shoes, what do they want from this? Why did they come and what do they want from this? So that you can provide like what you're talking about before, like as a service.
That's beautiful. The best way is to choose one or two compelling examples, build this up and leave it at that. Thank you for your input as well. That's really inspiring.